Welcome to our lecture series on CSR. This is going to be part 2 of our lectures on business ethics and CSR. And in today's lecture of mine, I'll be telling you about the different theories of business ethics. And along with that, I'll be telling you about the relationship between the business ethics and CSR. And at times it is said that CSR is basically founded on the foundation of business ethics. So with that idea, I'll be telling you about what is the relationship between the business ethics and CSR. CSR is basically part and parcel of management strategy of a company, and hence social responsibility encompasses good business ethics. And this is because one normally thinks of business ethics as applying to what business does within its walls, involving managers, consumers, investors, owners and employees. Now when we talk about the concern regarding business ethics and CSR, there is less concern which is placed on the natural environment, the community and its suppliers and their conditions of work. Social responsibility basically encompasses good ethics both within the walls of the company and outside. Some people think that within the walls of your business enterprise, if you are doing good, you are basically taking care of your business responsibility. Of course it is not. Within the walls of your business enterprise, you are doing good. That is of course for internal stakeholders you are working. But what about beyond the walls of your company? What you are doing? So it basically encourages the enterprises to be involved in social issues such as community involvement and improving working conditions in developing countries which are outside the walls of the enterprise. The consideration of all stakeholders is basically encouraged for two important reasons. Number one is it is good for business longevity and profitability. If you really want your business to sustain for long, you have to take care of, you have to consider all stakeholders' welfare, and of course once your stakeholders are happy, you are going to book a lot of profit out of your business enterprise, because every stakeholder will try to give his or her best to your business operations. Secondly, the private sector has basically they have won the battle to keep government out of business, but this still leaves many areas of the world where the private sector can either replace or assist the public sector in improving standards of living. So this is the second concern, that your survival is because of this logic that you will not only work for profit, but you will also look forward to the welfare. So in whichever country we have the welfare economy concept, the government is always there to take care of, to vouch the activities performed by corporate entities, and in case they find that they are not the performance is not up to the mark, they can take criticism. Government can in a parallel manner, government can enter into the business, and they can of course work on improving the standard of living of general public or the lower segment of the society. So both these reasons, if take the issue further, that then confining the study of ethics for a not-for-profit, of course. So it is not only for not-for-profit organizations, it is also for the profit-based organizations. So when we talk about the relationship between the business ethics and CSR, you can find that yes, they are interlinked, and if you ask me, I would say that business ethics is a broad foundations on the basis of which CSR is being founded. So CSR talks about making you realize about your social responsibilities, whereas business ethics talks about taking care of all stakeholders, or what you call as treating all stakeholders ethically or in an ethical manner. Now with this idea of business ethics and CSR, now let us come to our key point of discussion. What are the different theories of ethics? In the previous lecture of mine, I have told you about the three broad categories under which these theories have been grouped. One was consequentialism, second one was deontology, and third one was human nature of ethics. Now when we talk about the theories of ethics, it starts from the Aristotle. It was given by Aristotle 384-322 BC, and it was named as virtue ethics, and the key focus of this was on human virtues, that is moral character, and it need to be developed via practice. So the focus was to develop this characteristics by the way of practicing those human virtues or moral character in the business enterprise. And the decision making rule under this theory is always act according to virtue. That is, you have to exercise exhibit and develop the virtue ethics, and that should come into the corporate practice. Now, when we talk about the corporate motto under this theory, those entities which follow this theory of Aristotle in the name of virtue ethics in their business enterprise, their motto is to be virtuous. It will make you happy as well as your stakeholders. So not only stakeholders are supposed to feel happy, even it will create happiness for the business enterprise as a whole. So it focuses on personal integrity. Virtue ethics was basically focusing on personal integrity. Now, there is a criticism to this theory that how to reconcile individual and organization, how to find the how to reconciliate this conflicting interest between the individual and organizations. So where do they agree? What should be the common minimum point where they should agree with each other's motive? So this was this is the oldest theory till date, which was given by Aristotle in the name of virtue ethics, and the corporate entities, they are following it with the decision making rule of always act according to the virtue, and the corporate motto is of course be virtuous. So despite its criticism that how to reconcile between the individual and organizational motto, it is still in practice, and most of the business organizations, they follow the human virtues, the moral character and they have basically inculcated or included it into their practice as well. The second theory which comes to us is given by I. Kant in 1785, and it is popularly known as Kantian ethics. And when we look at the focal point of this very theory given by the Kant, it is the universal principles, that is rule based. It talks about adopting universal principles. Its focus is on universal principles, and it is basically rule based, that you have to draft certain rules and regulations in order to implement it into your organization. And when we talk about the decision making rule under the Kantian ethics, it is like acting according to the categorical imperative, that is, take it from the perspective of your duty. It is part of your duty that you have to follow those universal principles whenever you are performing your any of the duties. And in this kind of organizations where we follow Kantian ethics, the corporate motto is walk the talk, which means whatever you are talking, you have to walk on the same road, that is demonstrating to live up with the corporate mission and values. So you have to basically get aligned with the corporate mission and values. Now the criticism to this theory is that how to decide between conflicting moral duties. There are certain sets of moral duties which are conflicting to each other. So how to decide, although a way out can be found after looking at the specific scenario, but there is a criticism to this Kantian ethical theory that it is very good to talk about universal principle, drafting universal principle, creating a rule based framework and acting according to that specific framework, walking the talk. But how to decide between the conflicting moral duties, that becomes a point of criticism by the critiques, that in Kantian ethics everything is good, but how to decide between the conflicting moral duties. The third one, which is again very important, it was given by J.S. Mill in the year of 1861, and it is basically known as utilitarianism. It comes under that utilitarianism group, and it focuses on consequences based on the ends. Tell us that what is my end goal, what is my goal, what is the goal, to what extent the goal have been achieved. And here the decision making is what is the right thing to do. So we have to act according to the greatest happiness principle, and in short they call it GHP. There is an acronym called GHP. What is the greatest happiness principle? What is the right thing to do? The decision making rule as per the J.S. Mill's theory of consequences, where we look at the consequences, that is the outcome. What is the outcome? So the decision making rule is what is the right thing to do, that we have to decide and we have to perform accordingly. And if we look at the corporate motto here, it is to maximize overall happiness. That is called stakeholders satisfaction. When we talk about stakeholders, we not only include shareholders but also all other stakeholders, like say for instance we have supplier, we have customers, we have government entities, we have our employees. So we have to take care of all stakeholders and we have to ensure their satisfaction. Now there is another criticism into this theory also, how to compare utilities. It can tolerate social injustice also. So it talks about that if you are taking care of majority of your stakeholders, what about that minority? And that has always been with the consequentialism, with the theories based on consequentialism. Wherever we talk about consequences, this kind of criticism comes in front of us, that how to compare those utilities. And of course for that we need to take care of even the minority, even those who are into the minority of votes. Suppose I am taking care of majority of the people, I am trying to make them happy and creating overall happiness, but we should try to reach to each and every stakeholder, and we should take care of all stakeholders. So I would personally say that while ensuring the positive consequences or achieving those end results or goals, we should take care of all stakeholders. So in place of looking at majority, we can eliminate this criticism by taking care of all stakeholders approach. Next one is integrative social contract theory. This is another important theory of ethics, and it was given by Dunphy and Donaldson in 1994, and their focus was on hypothetical social contract, and they were taking it as a basis of morality, that there should be a hypothetical social contract that should be the point of focus, and decision making rule should be act according to hyper norms. And here I'll be telling you about what is the difference between norm and hyper norm. Suppose if I have to differentiate between the norm and hyper norm. Norms are basically, suppose if I'm taking my class and I have told my students that I'll be examining them, I'll be taking a test on a specific chapter of a specific topic. This is called norm which I have created. But suppose next day for when I'm coming for the test, I change my rule and I say that no, I'll now be taking the test of the second portion about which we have not made the announcement. That is called hyper norm. So one is which is norm means one which is defined. Hyper norm deals with the undefined areas also. So here the decision making rule is act according to hyper norms also. Like gender sensitivity, you are talking about your workplace safety, you are talking about the bribery, you are talking about the gender sensitivity at workplace. So all these points, they come under the broad classification of hyper norm, although it can change, it can vary from organization to organization, but I try to give an example of differentiating between the norm and hyper norm. Now what is the corporate motto here? If we look at the integrative social contract theory, the corporate motto here is respect local norms but check with hyper norms. So you have to take care of, you have to offer respect to local norms, whatever is the norm there, you have to follow that, but you have to take care of hyper norms also. And the criticism to this integrative social contract theory is that identify entry and exit from communities is little difficult. How to identify what are the hyper norms, how to take care of that, that is another point of debate which is there when we talk about integrative social contract theory. The next one is given by the Rawls, and it is in the name of justice and fairness, and it was given by J. Rawls, which is known as a theory of justice. In 1971 it was given as a theory of justice, and as a justice as fairness in 2001. So the same person have given two theories, one is on justice, another is on justice as fairness. And if we look at this theory of ethic, the focus is on social contract theory, and the decision making rule here is reasonable person perspective, that we have to take it from the perspective of a reasonable person, what a reasonable person can do in terms of following those justice and fairness towards all stakeholders. Now the criticism to this point is how to define a reasonable person. Even the concept of fairness itself it is very difficult to decide what is fair. What can be fair for me may become unfair to others. So again, there is a criticism to it, but despite all these criticisms, I personally feel that these different theories given by different thinkers, they have basically fine-tuned, they have basically given a new impetus to this entire thinking process of business ethics as a subject. And this is why now we talk about, we have come to a point where from starting from the consequentialism to the human nature of ethics, we have started talking about justice and fairness. So this is the outcome of these thinkers, their idea, their contribution to the body of knowledge with which we are now talking about these important aspects of business ethics. The source to these theories are basically, they have been taken from the book authored by Michael Hopkins in the year 2016. The title of book is CSR and Sustainability, From the Margins to the Mainstream, and it is published by Greenleaf Publishing. So the different theories and their summary have been taken from this particular source. And now we'll be talking about another aspect of business ethics and CSR. Why are business ethics necessary, and how can they be useful for a business enterprise? A question comes to us after discussing a lot about business ethics theories, their importance, they acting as foundation of CSR. A question comes to our mind: why are these business ethics points, they are necessary, and are they really useful for business enterprise? Because we are basically, of course, working for a profit motive. So are they that useful? So what is their necessity and what is their usefulness? That is another point of discussion when we talk about business ethics and CSR. So the first benefit which comes to us is like license to operate. So it is all based on reputation. You are basically finding a license to operate as a business enterprise, and reputation is basically an intangible asset. It increases value and supports future company development. You are basically creating or crafting a position for yourself that 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, where do I wish to see my company in the eyes of my stakeholders. So we talk about the future company development also. And reputation becomes very much relevant because it enables the building of trust in the relationships between the company and the stakeholders. And when we talk about the company and internal as well as external stakeholders, we talk about employees, management, suppliers, customers, investors, local community, public administration, partners, government entities, and there are some other sectors also. So when we talk about license to operate or creating a reputation, then of course that is a benefit. If my business enterprise is working on ethical norms, then of course my company is known for that. And corporate reputation is first of all an acknowledgement of the license to operate, without which no company can flourish. If you don't have a good reputation, if your company is not having good reputation in the market, then of course you cannot flourish for long. You can have short-term gains or short-term benefits, but of course for long you cannot flourish. However, you don't get your social license by going to a government ministry or going to visiting a counter, making payment of a fee and simply getting your license. No, this license is basically a license which you can't buy, which can't be purchased by making payment. What it requires is it requires far more than the money to truly become part of communities in which you operate. And there are a number of examples to it where companies, they have tried their level best to develop positive image about their company by the way of some sponsors. No, that has gone haywire. You can create your reputation by your acts. So reputation is closely related to the social license to operate, and rather than being a new cost, actually makes transactions between the company and stakeholders more effective by lowering bargaining and government cost. So you can, with your reputation, you can reduce your bargaining and governance cost. So there are a number of examples to it also. For instance, the cooperative bank in the UK once calculated the cost benefit of adoption of social and ethical responsible conduct, and they found that their social and ethical responsible conduct, it generated the net benefit of 13 million pounds, huge amount. Taking into account both costs, they considered cost as well as benefit, and when they talked about the cost, it included investment in the community, business turned down for ethical reasons, and social reporting cost, and the revenue on the other hand was new customers gained. And of course, when you are able to regain new customers or retain existing customers, that is again a benefit to you. So gaining new customer is basically a point which is emanating from your good reputation, and it is basically coming from your business ethics acts. If we talk about the social contract example, for a company to have a high level of reputation means that its stakeholders have confidence in it. They are and they trust their company in which they are invested. However, the management of such relationship is very complicated. The difficulty is due to the fact that on the one hand, stakeholders' interests sometimes conflict with each other. Sometimes there are different stakeholders and the interest of one stakeholder contradicts with that of another one. On the other hand, when we talk about stakeholders, their contribution to the company's mission fulfillment, so they are supposed to share some of the benefits produced by their contribution. They contribute to the betterment of the company. A balancing problem between legitimate claims made by the different stakeholders towards the company has to be solved. That is the only problem which we are facing, which as a company you may witness when you have to balance between the legitimate claims made by different stakeholders towards the company, and you have to take care of all stakeholders. And it is important to note here that the word stakeholder is descriptive in nature. It is not a normative concept, because it is saying nothing about how to balance interest and values. So a moral to this is that it's a prescriptive criterion. It is needed to define a balancing criteria acceptable to all stakeholders as a basis for the corporation necessary to achieve the corporate mission. So the social contract example, this is why it is said when we are giving number of examples that how to create that trust among your stakeholders, the company has to provide itself with a strategic multi-stakeholder approach and with a method that offers a balancing criteria between various interests and values. That is what we have to do. The problem is not that difficult. It can be solved through business ethics, and that is a discipline applying ethical philosophical theories concerning justice, economic context and decision making processes, which is typical of organizations. So my dear learners, what I wanted to convey here is that you can basically you have a license to operate, and you have that social contract that if you are taking care of all stakeholders, in the turn stakeholders will also take care of your company. So business ethics basically suggests that the concept of a fair and efficient social contract between the company and all the stakeholders. So you should have a fair and efficient social contract, and if we follow the rules, it is not a real contract but an ideal one, and it is of course a touchstone. And the basis of this social contract concept is basically the justice, which sees as fair what people rationally and consensually accept unanimously. So if you are really willing to reach to a fair agreement, some conditions must be satisfied. The first condition is the interest of all must be taken into consideration. Don't go by majority. Take care of all stakeholders. All must be informed and not deceived. Nobody should feel that I am not informed and I have been deceived. No one must have suffered or suffer power or constraint. If you ensure this, then of course you will be able to eliminate those conflicting interests. An agreement must be reached voluntarily through rationality. If we are rational into our behavior, then of course we can reach to the unanimous decision making process. Managing a company by a fair and efficient contract with its stakeholders can generate various benefits, and those benefits are immense, and of course they are ensuring your company to be more profitable, you enjoy your reputation. And if I have to conclude, I would say that business ethics, basically it reduces ambiguity, vagueness and arbitrary discretionary power when contracts and the laws are too rigorous, insufficient or just silent. So in this sense, ethics can be an intangible asset of the company, and it can increase its value. And the more complex the transactions, the more stakeholders fear the risk of abuse, and the more anxious a company is about its own reputation, the more strongly it feels the need for business ethics. Because as a governance element in the interactions with the external stakeholders is needed, and that is what is missing. So with this, I'm going to conclude today's discussion on the topic of business ethics and CSR. I hope you must have enjoyed today's lecture of mine. Thank you so much.